Hello and welcome to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast, episode 58. I am Kurt.
Jesus Christ.
EndofLine.
Nightson.
Oreztes.
Gigett.
And the
special
empty chair is
guest
Handor.
This stream is brought to you by whatever brand of chair that is.
Our spotlight topic today will be modular design in RPGs. But before we get to that, Endo, do we have any announcements?
We do have announcements. We have our next Paper Scandal show is going to be July the 23rd at 6 p.m. That will be our Savage Worlds Adventure Edition Suede. We are playing Supernatural Investigation Program SIP. We missed our show last week. We had some illnesses on the staff, and we kind of want everyone to be there, so we decided to push back. So the next episode will be July 23rd at 6 p.m. We also have side quests coming up. We kind of mentioned that last week on the show. We'll have that run, our first game on July 27th. That'll be at 9 a.m. Kimmy from the Happy Jacks podcast, which if you have not checked them out on Twitch. And then we will be playing. Is the game we're going to be playing Virgins and Vixens?
That is correct. Yeah, that's Kimmy's.
Oh, nice.
Kimmy wrote that game. So
Yeah, it's on itch.io or something, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably goldenlassogames.itch.io.
Yes.
Yeah. So we will put links to that game, and then we will also have a scheduled event on the channel. So if you want to go ahead and follow that, or you can check us out on our Facebook. Yeah. So July 27th at 9 a.m.
Awesome sauce.
Awesome.
Who's playing in it?
We don't know yet.
We will figure that out. We will know next week.
All right.
So let's move on to what we're excited about. Kurt, why don't you start since empty chair is still empty chairing?
Sure. So I just put something in here. So I've talked a little bit about a game I wrote called Lighthearted. I have a setting which was originally for Savage Worlds called Nuclear Night School, which is a terrible name that I'm going to change eventually.
I like it. What do you hate about it?
I just don't like the name. Like, Nuclear Night School doesn't tell you what it is.
I like it too.
But I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll workshop it.
Kurt's stupid. It's fine.
So I started out as a Savage Worlds game, and it didn't really fit as Savage Worlds, and so I ended up writing my own system for it called Lighthearted, which is about rolling with your emotions and this like cool emotion tracker thing that goes back and forth. But something that wasn't really functioning correctly was I want the characters to sort of overcome the stereotypes that they dealt with in high school, which is like they're a prep or a geek or a jock or a rebel, right? It's basically Breakfast Club. And so I want to have these characters from Breakfast Club who've sort of like figured out that their stereotypes their cliques don't represent them as well as they should. And so they want to get out from under those. But the way I was structuring the hindrances or the malfunctions in my game was more like Savage Worlds, where it's a trope to lean into and not something to overcome. And so everyone was just sort of leaning into their stereotypes instead of trying to like get past them. So I had this breakthrough that I need to rewrite it so that it's not something that's actually wrong with you. It's something that society expects to be wrong with you. And so if you feed into that by playing dumb, if you're a prep or a jock, right? You get the Benny, you get the heart point, which is like the meta currency. But if you subvert their expectations and you do something that could like negatively impact you socially, then you get XP. So like instead of playing dumb, like if you struggle to figure something out or do some research, as if you have the clueless one, then nobody expects you to be smart, so it's going to be harder, but you're going to get XP at the end. But if you just play dumb, people just let you off the hook for stuff, so you just get heart. But so that's where it's at now. I'm trying to reinforce the fact that these aren't necessarily things that are true about you, but they're things that you can use as social armor because they are already expected of you. So I was really excited about that.
Yay, breakthroughs.
Well, plus we're going to start our like an actual campaign playtest of that in the near future.
Yeah. I just need to figure out what night we're going to do it. Probably like a weeknight or...
And, finishing the rules of a game we're going to play is a good idea.
Well, I mean, if everybody's on board, I'm totally cool with, like, play jamming or play storming, right? Where you just sort of play with half-finished rules and make calls as you go and then refine between sessions. But
All right, so I'm gonna play an extrovert who just gets a ton of XP for staying home and playing video games all day.
extrovert is
Right?
not one of them.
What?
No. I'm not gonna reward you for not going to the game, not participating in the game. That was the big thing. Is a lot of them are like, "Oh, you're socially awkward," but it has to come out in a way that doesn't reward you for not participating.
Just let me beat Kurt. Just let me beat your game.
He wants to be a blind, deaf 12-year-old
Just take
guy.
it.
I'm specifically trying to prevent characters from having to sit out scenes to get a reward, because players, if you give them an optimal choice, they will choose it even if it sucks. Like if there was a really fun way to get 50 XP per hour in a video game and a really boring way to get 100 XP per hour in a video game, you will punch that rock that the XP comes out of all day because you want the XP, and you will hate it, and you will say this is a bad game because it didn't give me the XP for the fun thing.
It's called PODT.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do the 50 XP fun way.
Yeah, and so I need to make sure that it rewards the fun part of the game and not playing the game.
Yeah. Well, cool. So Chairman is not back yet, so we'll skip to what we've played recently.
All right.
Woo.
Kurt, you played
Oh shit, am I
Hearts
first?
of Wulin.
Oh, I played Hearts of Wulin.
Really?
So yeah, I did.
Is it
how is
Wulin
it?
or Wulin?
I think it's Wulin. You know what? I don't
Wulin.
speak Mandarin,
Wulin.
and so I screw up the pronunciations constantly. But there are a lot of all of the like names are Mandarin, like all the name lists and stuff. And so I'm constantly having to look up the pronunciation guides. Like the character, huh?
I was gonna say this is the one that has the art by Minerva, right? The same one
Yes.
who did the cover for Demigods.
Yes, Minerva did the cover for Hearts of Wulin. It's a wuxia melodrama written by Lowell Francis and Agatha
Christie?
Chen.
Agatha Christie. It's a horrible tabletop.
It's not written by Agatha Christie. It's good. It's a fun game. It plays out like a melodrama. It's got some fights and it's got some feels, and it's got a lot of really like that kind of. It plays out like a soap opera.
It's a
but-
genre that it's a genre that I'm very interested in because I love the wire fu combat mechanics and the martial arts. But then they were like, it's more like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon than it is like, Dragon Tiger Gate, which is nothing but over the top martial arts.
Right. It's more like so Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is actually a pretty solid example. Like you've got the forbidden love storyline going on. You've got the I have duty to country, so we can't be together thing going on. You've got the young girl who's secretly a ninja, or like not a ninja, but like secretly a warrior. Yeah, you've got all this stuff, right? Who's pretending to be a like society person, and then at night she's off like doing wire fu on the rooftops, and so it's actually a really good example. There's also some, I guess the genre is really popular in China. The like wuxia soap opera type shows. They're like our Guiding Light, right? Except a lot more combat and wire fu.
Cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
I saw that and I was thinking about backing it, but then I was like, I don't think anybody else knew about it, and I feel like I'm only allowed to introduce you guys to one Asian themed tabletop game a year, and I blew it on TBZ. So
Nah, bring them all.
I don't know if I'd consider TBZ blowing it.
Yeah,
I don't know. That was pretty fun.
That was great. I backed Thousand Arrows and Hearts of Wulin, so we'll have both of those to play eventually.
I want to do Thousand Arrows.
Yeah,
I haven't seen a lot about it, but I hear it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's some good stuff coming out, and they're both. I like that we're starting to get those Asian themed games written by Asian people, written by people who like they're telling their own stories, and so it's nice
the
to
culture.
Yeah. Like Agatha speaks Mandarin, so like all of the names and stuff, like the pronunciations, like they're correct and stuff. So which is nice.
Is there a pronunciation guide in the book?
I don't know. I hope so. I should message her and just be like, hey, are you gonna include like a phonetic?
Here's a PDF.
Is that a stretch goal or something? Can
we just get like an audiobook of someone reading the name lists to us?
Nice. Well, cool.
Yeah, it's
All right, so
well, a couple of us were skipping Chair Guy again because he's still not back. A few of us got together and played For the Queen recently, which was super fun. But it was Nightson and Oreztes' first time playing. So what did you guys think of For the Queen?
I liked it. Definitely would have been a better game to play not half asleep.
Mm-mm.
It was kind of like, yeah.
And at least twice as drunk.
It does require a lot of imagination.
I thought it was really fun, and I really liked Mrs. Oreztes. She was saying that she struggles with RPGs sometimes, but this game kind of like helps you practice how to do that, which I thought was a really good description of For the Queen. Like it helps stretch that role-playing muscle, but it has those safety tools to let you go like, fuck, I back out, because it's got the X card and the pass and all that kind of stuff.
I will agree that I do think those are some of the best instructions on how to play a new game.
Mm-hmm.
I really did like the learning how to do the things part of it, because it just fits the flow of the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more interesting, it's more engaging, and I pay more attention to the rules when it's not just one person reading out of a book, and then it's like, you do this and this, because we played that Spirit Island game, and the whole time Nightson was reading the instructions, I was like, I'll figure it out when the time comes. I don't know what any of this stuff means.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like, I think a lot of times when we play board games, somebody takes on the I'm reading the instructions out loud job. And like you just kind of glaze over, like when you listen to box text and you're like, But with For the Queen, because you're like reading short little paragraphs each, like you're able to stick with it and figure out what's going on faster.
Well, there's also the fact that there's like 3 rules.
Yeah. Take a card, read it, ask follow-up questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it might be. I think the queen that you pick, the style of the queen kind of influences before the story even begins.
Mm-hmm.
What you think about the queen, because we took Mab, Queen of Air and Darkness, so she was going to be evil regardless of what the card said.
Yeah. Well, and go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like if you just did like a blind draw, like of all the different queens, and just like, which one did you get? I got the Down syndrome queen. Okay, well that's our queen, and then that's going to influence how you answer the questions.
I've played it several times. I played it a lot on index cards before the actual like decks were created, before we had the art for those queens, and so I think I almost like it better without the card, because it leaves you a lot freer, right? It doesn't handhold you, but it does, of course. There's no like quick start to sort of jumpstart your imagination on who the queen is. So I mean, if you're someone who's open to just sort of figuring everything out as you go and walking blind through the story until you find it, I'd say try it without pulling a queen card, or just be like bees, in a hive, and the queen is the queen bee.
I can't wait to play it the way Oreztes suggested, where we play roadies for the band Queen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I really want to do that. I think that would be super fun. It'd be amazeballs. That's exciting. But Oreztes, you mentioned it. We also played a spirit game. What is that game called?
Spirit Island?
Spirit Island?
Is
that
it called
is correct.
Spirit Island?
I cannot believe you guys played that without.
It's a 4-player game.
It's a 4-player game.
It's
So-
a horrible
another
game.
session.
You would not enjoy it.
I thought we were gonna wait to play that on the thing.
Well, I think the plan is to do the campaign, but we wanted to test the rules so we at least weren't like completely stupid before we played it on the stream. And so like the I don't know, starting adventure thing that kind of teaches you how to play it was really interesting, and I'm really interested to see how the other characters work that aren't the like base characters.
Yeah, the simple starter characters.
Yeah, I'd be interested in trying it when you don't have the pre-constructed starter deck.
Yeah, that plays into it too.
Yeah. I think that's what's going to be the best thing for you, EndofLine. Man, with my brain not working at 100% capacity, remembering everybody's fake name is really hard. I'm like, you, the person with the beard. I think it's going to be...
Which one?
right? Y'all fucking have beards. The big beard, the big fancy beard. It'll be great for you when you get to play, because you won't be playing the like poopy starter decks. You actually get to play like a cool character instead of going, man, this character could be so much cooler if it wasn't this base deck.
The water guy was pretty badass, Billy Gunn. Mm-hmm. I liked it. I like the water guy. He's very, very protective over his water.
With garbage everywhere else.
I started watching there's a Board Game Geek did an actual play of it, and I got halfway through it, and it looked really fun.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of overwhelming at first.
It does.
Like the first couple turns, I was like, how are we supposed to win? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It starts to get out of control.
Yeah, it's like, oh my dear God, and then it's, oh my dear God, it's getting worse, and then you're like, oh, okay, we're finally powerful enough to stave off the tide a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
There's definitely a
tilt.
tilt.
A lot of parts.
There's like a tilt to the game where you're being overwhelmed and you can't manage everything, and then you finally get powerful enough that it's like, oh, okay, we can just wipe the board. Cool, okay.
The thing I think is so interesting about playing Spirit Island is the theme and the like what you guys just described about the it's, oh my God, it's getting worse, oh, suddenly we're powerful enough and we just wipe the board with it, is exactly how Forest Mother plays. About forest spirits trying to expel dangers, which are usually invaders. I did not know what Spirit Island was when I started writing my story game about forest spirits. But
I think Nightson may have said to you when we finished playing, why didn't you write this game?
Yeah, well, that game's a lot different than Forest Mother. Like, it is a complex board game, but the themes are right on fucking point.
You should contact the company that makes Spirit Island and ask if they want to
see if I can license it.
Yeah, be like, can we just like license your IP and apply it to this tabletop?
Yeah, can I just make a story game based on Spirit Island? Because I've already got the whole thing done. I'm just gonna get your art. That'd be cool, yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully in another month or so we'll have the actual like board game streaming room up, and then y'all can play that like for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll be good.
Which will be awesome.
Yeah.
So what is more ESO?
I have been playing more Elder Scrolls Online.
Oh, A lot of Elder
Scrolls Online. Yeah.
In fact, streaming it up until we had to yell at you to get to turn it off and get onto this call.
Yeah.
Quit hijacking the stream. We got a podcast to do.
I definitely lose track of time when playing it because there's just you're running and doing so much so quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Oreztes and I made a healer yesterday, and so I'm leveling up as a Templar healer because I kind of want to see how healing is in a game like this, because it's very different than like WoW and EverQuest and that. And it's super crazy fun having active combat healing. I would not have guessed it was, but it super freaking is.
So how does the healing compare to other active combats like
Wildstar,
or
Terra? Doesn't Terra have that?
Neverwinter Nights has active.
Yeah.
So those are targetable.
Oh.
So like in Wildstar, your heal would be like a cone or a straight long line. This is more or less just a target, and it just AoEs. It's mostly just all AoE heal.
Okay.
At all times.
Okay.
So like you put it on the ground, or you target a person?
You just hit it, and there's AoEs in a radius around you.
So it's up to the healer to position yourself.
Exactly.
Healers adjust.
Yeah.
Healers have to position themselves.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's super crazy fun. And then you because the builds are so diverse, like I'm doing like a melee healer. So like I'm using Adric's spear to like do using a javelin to like stab things in an AoE, and then when I need to heal, I'll just back off and back roll and just like do heals and build my magicka back up. So yeah, so I'm gonna level this character, and then I'm gonna try a tank next. But I've yet to find a builder character that I'm not having an absolute blast with. I'm looking forward to you guys eventually getting in the game. I think you guys will dig it. Yep, good finds. I'll be streaming more tonight.
So Handor, now that you're back, what have you been playing recently?
I haven't been playing much of anything. I played a little bit of Gold Rush. I don't know why. Don't ask.
Because you play nothing but simulators.
I do not. I play more than simulators.
You play all the simulators. Gold Rush is a simulator where you pan for gold and stuff, and you create a business to pan for gold.
I enjoy simulators.
What about Goat Simulator? Do you play
I know about this one because I was thinking about buying it for Larry and installing it on his computer.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like, why don't you just come to California and then you could do that IRL with Luda's Life.
And they can almost kill you.
Yeah, we're not doing gold padding anymore.
I didn't get to go the first time.
You're welcome to go. You're welcome to go. I am not participating.
I'm still upset with Luda's Life because I came to visit California and she never invited me to go gold panning.
That is true.
So,
you wouldn't have had time.
You got snubbed.
Yeah, you didn't have time. You're building the table.
Yeah.
You were being our.
I would have made time. I would have made time to go gold panning.
It is not as luxurious as it sounds.
I'm pretty sure we've all gotten the hint that Nightson did not enjoy the gold panning.
Gigett opened a window on a potato.
Nightson would have enjoyed it just fine, provided we didn't scale a mountain up and down to get to where we needed to pan.
Well, that definitely played in a big factor into it.
That was the big problem. We had to climb up a mountain after we climbed down a mountain to get to the river, and then we had to climb back up the mountain afterwards, and it was quite a climb. So
it was probably about a half-mile trail going down about 400 feet.
Pretty steep. Slide them out.
Oh, I'm sorry I brought that up.
So yeah.
Oh, it was miserable.
Well, you also missed telling us about the thing that you were excited about. Do you want to jump back up and tell us what Terraria?
Well, I briefly mentioned it last week. Did
you get a date on that?
They just said, look, it'll be done when it's done. We're hoping it'll be done before the end of 2019. And what I'm speaking of is, of course, Terraria Journey's End, marking the final update of Terraria, which is every update that they've done has been the final update. But they're actually adding quite a bit to this update as opposed to, I don't know, like a 16th of what a usual update would be. This is going to be a pretty big update. And it's going to be like 800 new items. Several new bosses and challenges, a new challenging mode, which is going to be even more challenging. So there's normal mode, then you have expert mode, which is, you barely survive, like, spawning in because slime, if you ever played it, slimes are like, they have 5 health, you just, and it dies, and then you get its loot, but no, they have like 100 health out of the gate in expert mode, so the master mode is going to be probably insane. They're probably going to have, like, every slime in the game is going to be like bosses. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be called the master difficulty.
Well, let me know when it comes out. I'd be interested in going back and checking it out again.
I'll be interested in playing it too when it releases.
Yeah, we're also one of our Pixel Scandal friends who was kind of started out, but I think he decided that it wasn't for him. Rando said that he's only playing. Unfortunately, you can do this. He's only going to play if we play hardcore, and I said no.
Nope.
And I'm excited to watch him play hardcore, where every time he dies, he loses everything and has to start from scratch, which means he's going to be eating up through all of our resources.
I will absolutely not be participating in that.
No, you don't have to, but you will participate in supplying him with all of the ore that you mine, because he'll continually have to be making new pieces of armor and weapons. So.
Okay.
Anyways.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now that we have filled ourselves in on empty chairs information, which is what we were calling you while you were gone. Let's move into our spotlight topic for today, which is modular design in RPGs. Nightson, why don't you take it away?
So I'm sure anyone who's run a game has come across a circumstance where you have prepped out an encounter or a series of encounters, or, the party's going to go to a tower today. And then the first thing that happens in game, hey guys, let's all get on a boat and go to an island. After you sigh and assuming you don't just try to railroad them back into the tower to make your life easier, you got to come up with something.
Yeah, like there's no available boats.
Well, that would be the railroading part. So modular design is kind of a way of handling that without relying 100% on your improv. And so the idea being is you prep adventures, maps, encounters, NPCs and whatnot to throw at them, from a book rather than just having to come up with everything on the fly.
You know what? I just realized Pixel Scandal is going to start a schooling for your improv. And what's going to happen is we're going to need you to subscribe to our Patreon. And then for so many dollary dues a month, we throw at you ideas, and then you have to try to come up with a modular design on the spot, improving whatever scenario we throw at you. So that's a new thing that we're doing for Pixel Scandal. And
Handor is going to lead the charge on that.
Yeah.
So one of the key benefits of doing this is just that it allows for more player agency. They can do anything and go anywhere without feeling like they're railroaded the whole time.
So are you talking about taking like each of your different, let's just say you're segmenting out your campaign, making each of the segments ambiguous enough that you can kind of apply them to a different scenario depending on where your team is going? So like if I have an in-town thing and I am planning on you making your way to a tavern, I have to make that into a way where if you decide to go to the church, I can adapt that scene into a church.
So that's definitely one way of doing it. Like if you design the encounters that people are supposed to take in such a way that you can literally just put a coat of paint over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of things can just apply anywhere. Instead of a bunch of soldiers, you're now fighting a bunch of holy men.
That works really well with mysteries too. That sort of here are the 3 things you need to know that say this is the bad guy, and so wherever you go, you just plop one of your 3 things in, whichever one that makes sense, right? You just have several little clues sort of pre-built and set up, so whenever someone wherever they go, you're able to like give them the clues that they need to solve the mystery.
I'm big on designing games that way.
Yeah. And so, I mean...
It's less stressful for you as a GM if you're prepared.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be, like, combat encounters, but I think when you're running D&D or any game that requires a lot of prep for combat encounters, this is especially helpful, where you just prep, like, okay, here's my 3 front line, my 2 back line, and my weird thing, and I've got all the stats that I need for it, and if they go to the goblin caves, then they're goblins, and if they go to the gnoll pits, then they're gnolls, and if they go to the dance party, then they're nobles. Like, you just prep, you have your encounter, and you just slide
There's gnolls at the dance party?
No, they're nobles.
Oh, nobles. I heard gnolls.
No, they're not. They're
it's a gnoll dance party.
It's a gnoll dance party.
It's a gnoll dance party, guys.
How dare you?
That's what I heard. I'm like,
who let the dogs out?
This isn't actually something I've ever thought about, but it kind of brings to mind that most of the highlights of the campaigns that we've done, and I don't know that everyone agrees with this, but like I'm thinking back to like our What's in the Box game, and like still to this day, the most memorable scene of that was the catacombs on the island right before we left. Like the delve through the catacombs, and it's like I'm thinking about it like this, where it's not so much open-ended where you have to do that. Like, you already have a very clear structure of what's going to happen depending on which room we go into, and there is no thinking on your feet. Like, you've already figured out, like, this is what will happen when you get to this space, whereas when you're outside in the open world, you've got to constantly be thinking on your feet. And I don't mean to say this in a bad way, but it means less quality content because you're forcing the GM to immediately snap on, like, be on their feet all the time. That's exhausting and difficult to do all the time. But like when you're in a confined space like a dungeon crawl, you've already thought through this thing. The content's rich. You already have in your head what it looks like, what it feels like, and what's going to happen. I just feel like that makes the experience a little bit better than having to experience content that the GM just had to literally, oh, you decided to go here? Well, I haven't thought about that. Well, quickly, here's where it is. It's just innately going to be a less rich piece of or a less rich experience because you're having to think of it on the spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that example of that you're talking about the dungeon under the castle, right? Where there
with the lich that we went down the lich and I charmed the gargoyle and everything.
Yes.
He's talking about on the island when we got like a whole bunch of weird loot and we used the undead bison stick to...
and we hoarded all... We spent like half the game just hoarding all the gold, and Kurt was getting annoyed.
We were like popping the gold seals off of the entrance of every room. And
It was... I think that was... It was sort of Tomb of Horrors. It was... Someone had written a Savage Worlds Tomb of Horrors type of game. It was like the Dungeon of Farquaad or something like that.
Yeah, it was Farquaad was the Lich's name.
And so I had snagged that, and you're right. There's gonna be more internal consistency when you prep, right? When you have the whole thing sort of prepped out, and you know, like, this is gonna go here and this is gonna go there. I think where the modular part of it becomes more necessary is when you're on a time constraint. Mm-hmm. So if you have to get this game done in 4 hours and you need a meaningful encounter in 4 hours, then you need to know, well, rooms 7, 8, 9, and 10 are worthless, or not worthless, but are like less necessary for a meaningful story, and so we can just rip those out as needed to fit time. Or
you can put whatever room you want to be where.
Yeah, and so you have like here's the things that I will add if we're short, if we come up short and need to add more time. And here's the things that I will take out if we go long, right? Which of course is really useful in a con game, which is I think one of our next things. So what are some of your thoughts on that, Nightson, like in con games?
Con games. You have to design modular without the ability to for the improv, simply because time is so variable. You get four to six random people you've never seen before. You don't know how fast they work, how well they work together. Mm-hmm. You can only guess how long your game's going to take for a random group of people. So you have to build to have your plot points fit anywhere, and be able to drop scenes and still make it out of there in 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or add scenes.
Right.
So, speaking of con games, a lot of con games are, like, especially with Wizards of the Coast, they're like living, Adventure League, stuff like that. And those are mods, modules or whatever, that people are just running. How would you apply modular game design to a pre-written mod? Because you have your mod, you have your story, you have your outline, you have your encounters, everything, 1, 2, 3, 4. But those could still go quite long. So how would you adjust those?
So, go ahead, Nightson.
So you're kind of more limited with like a living campaign, what you can and can't do, because they have strict rules for if the players don't finish, then they don't finish. Or if they don't find this loot or encounter this character, it doesn't happen, and they don't get credit for it and stuff like that. One thing you can use those for is going the other way. Though the way those modules are built, and this goes for any module, taking a pair of scissors and literally cutting that map out, cutting that encounter out, cutting that treasure, those traps, those whatnot, is great to literally just put in a pile next to you. And when you need it for something, it's like, oh, here's a prefab. Here's a nice level 4 encounter with some loot and whatnot in the woods, because the players are wandering through the woods and I didn't prep anything for the woods today.
Yep. Right. Living Greyhawk modules were great for doing that in 3.5.
Yeah, that's a good point though. But I think with modulars, if it's not a living game, if it's like I'm running a mod of this game because I told my friends I would run them a game and then I didn't have enough time to write something, so cool, I found a cool PDF and I'm gonna run this thing.
Welcome to the Lost Mines of Phandelver.
Right, exactly. I think if you read through it and familiarize yourself with the mod that you're running, and it's not under the constraints of like the living story type thing or organized play, which things can get cut or which things can get adjusted to fit what your players are doing. Because I mean, mods are written with your players are absolutely going to make this decision, and then they don't make that decision, and you're like, well, shit, that's not in the mod. Now I got to make something up. But and sometimes they do spend more time on something that the mod was like, it's going to be a quick little scene, and then you're going to move on to this other thing because they're totally going to get that clue fast, and then they don't, right? And so I think it's just familiarizing yourself with the mod that you're running so that you know what you can take out or what, I got to add a scene here because they blew through all this shit. And now I'm just going to, they're supposed to camp and it says that nothing happens. Well, tonight there's wolves because we got
an hour and a half to go and the next scene is only 30 minutes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's I think what's important about if you are going to run a mod, make sure you're as familiar with it as something you wrote yourself, so that it still feels like it's an organic story.
Well, the fun thing about mods is like even those old what people would look back today and just scoff at how nonsensical they are. The old here's a castle and here's rooms 1 through 30 and what's in each of those rooms.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Those are inherently modular by design. They might not have any story or flavor or plot put into them, but they're really good to use for that.
Right.
If you just apply logic on top of that, you've suddenly created a living, breathing encounter or a system that feels like it will work without hours and hours of prep.
One of my favorite things for that was back in 3.5 times. I don't remember the company. I don't even remember the exact name of the book, but there was something that came out that was called like The World's Biggest Dungeon or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
It was a book that was a module, and it was just a dungeon crawl that took you from level 1 to 20. And that was it. You never leave the dungeon. It's just, here's 20 levels of dungeon.
You were born here. You will die here.
Yeah. And that thing was awesome because it's just like, oh man, my players are level 6. What are we doing? Flip to the level 6 chapter. We're doing this and this. All right, cool.
Well, one fun thing, D&D does this really well, but other systems do it decently, is if a system has like a APL system where it says, hey, here's an appropriate fight for a group of level 4 people or level 5 or whatnot.
What's APL?
Average party level. So it basically allows you to, thank you for reminding me. But it allows you to say, okay, I have a party of 3rd and 4th level people. The average party level is 4, so I want an encounter that should challenge a 4th level party. And so ever since like D&D 3rd, they've been putting out their monster manuals with this is inappropriate for a 4th level party, this is appropriate for a 5th, etc.
The CR, challenge ratings.
The fun thing is that your players will never know that you slapped a coat of paint on the gnolls and now they're goblins.
Now they're dance gnolls.
Tough ass goblins.
Yeah, they're the make it, give reason. In one of the games we ran in 4th, I needed 4th level fight for you guys, and I ended up using Sahagin. And I just rebranded them and gave them like poisonous claw, like a poisonous gauntlet.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
I think that's those are really, really fun, and one of the best things you can do when you're playing a game like D&D is if you feel like, oh, we're just facing kobold after kobold and they're getting boring, like just go get a monster you think is interesting, call it a kobold, and you're good. Like it doesn't have to be, you don't have to stick to the stats that are in the book for that kind of stuff.
Or just take a kobold and call it something else, and then your players are happy because they're not fighting kobolds anymore.
Cayucus bugbears.
It's still kobold.
This is a baby white worm.
But you're in the biggest kobold dungeon. It's a level 1 to 20 dungeon of nothing but kobolds.
Look, dude, if I'm in a kobold dungeon and I'm not playing a kobold, I'm leaving the dungeon.
We did do that.
I know.
The R30 bugbear to TPK.
So something like we're talking a lot about combats and D&D stats, but I actually did this with my one of my Nuclear Night School games where the game takes place at a frat party. The game starts with them arriving at the party and it ends with them leaving the party. And so I had a list of like, here are a bunch of weird things that could happen at the party. Like the jocks are doing keg stands. Who does a keg stand? Oh, a vampire shows up. The fairy who's running this party decides to make things interesting and has a bunch of bikers drive through the windows. Okay, we were playing Weird Science, but so I had all these things that could happen, and I just, as we needed them, I would slot them in. So like, because I had the players make characters as we went, so I didn't know what cliques the characters were going to be in. So I just had like, here is my scene for the jock to shine, and here is my scene for the prep to shine. You can translate this to anything, of course. Like here's my scene. Here's a scene where the rogue can shine, right? Here's the trap room, and if we get a rogue, then I slot in my traps. And so I had this whole list, but it doesn't necessarily have to be combats. It could be anything. Like I had a fight between the popular girl and her boyfriend, so that one of the characters could try to, like, I don't know, either take a side or... So I had all these little weird things that might happen at a party that would cause conflict that they could interact with.
Well, I think what Endo was saying earlier about, like, if you're in an open world and, like, the GM has to make things up about what's going on, and sometimes it doesn't feel as like, well thought through. I'm the type of GM that if you guys go into a town... I have a list of every building that is in that town and who works there and how they're relevant to the plot or what kind of information they could have, so that if you walked into the bar and talked to the barmaid, Sally's got a backstory and information to give you if you talk to her. But if you decide to go to the bank, the banker has information. And so it's kind of that modular design for a mystery game. Where you fuckers are all smiling. What are you laughing at? It's very distracting.
How do you sustain a campaign like that?
That sounds exhausting.
That sounds impossible.
15-year-old me is all about that. I don't have time.
Well, I think what it is when you've designed enough cities, you don't reinvent the cities. You're just like, okay, so this was Boomtown, and now it's Smallville, and next it's Fresno, and it's the same towns, same names for the same people. Maybe you change the names, and then you're like, okay, here are my clues for the story. Slot them in.
So basically doing the exact same, just on a much grandiose scale.
Right, exactly. And so that's, yeah. And I honestly, like you were saying with dungeons, where you've got the pile of dungeons you've pulled from mods, I can do that with a mystery game too, where I find in a mod like a town that's already written, that already has names of people in all the different stores and their backstories, how they're all connected to each other, and then I just lay my mystery or my story over the top of this town that was already written by somebody else. And I may not use the story from the mod, but I can use the pre-written town that already has great. All the NPCs.
This is great tips and tricks for beginner GMs.
Yeah.
On the topic of maps, you can never have enough maps of everything. Because your players will inevitably break through a wall into another building that you were not expecting. Like, why would you want to go there? That's irrelevant. Yeah. You're stupid.
I think
that's the way they're going.
Gigett, you were talking about that's sort of how Savage Worlds does their adventures, though, right? Like they have those plot point campaigns.
Yeah. That
are intrinsically modular, where they have here's like little quests or little points of interest that can kind of happen along the way. And you can here's the carrot, right? Here's the hook that you leave out, and if they take it, cool, that you're going on that journey. Otherwise, you just wait till they get to the next point, and then here's the hook for that one.
Not to spoil anything, and I won't like say too much, but even with SIP, like I've written it in such a way that you guys have come across 3 or 4 other mysteries that you could possibly go down that route. You guys could go figure out what's going on with several different things, or keep going with the main plot. And if you decide to keep going with the main plot, cool, I have that written out. If you decide to go down one of those side streets, whether it's Manny West or what's going on at the carnival, or all these other different things that may not be like directly to related to what's going on, you could go that direction, and I've got it written. I've got enough of it written, not a whole like campaign's worth of information, but enough like, okay, here are the various things that could spawn a side story if you decided to go that direction. And if you don't, then cool. I didn't write a whole campaign for it, but it's modular, right? It's like, all right, well, we can just pick up this plot, and maybe you guys will run into it later on down the campaign because I already wrote the idea for it. So, why not pick it up and move it later on in the story? But I'll change the names, but it'll be the same, end result.
Now this side quest is in the next town.
right. Except their names.
They'll look at it.
Yeah, except their names are now Jimmy John and, whatever. Like, it's...
On the topic of names, I found this in like an old Matt Mercer video, and I've been such a fan of it, and I just haven't really ran a game in a while, but I definitely want to do it, which is having a pre-built list of names.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure.
And literally just like, because I'm terrible with coming up with names on the spot. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
90% of NPCs are Johnny, insert profession.
Well, there's a website
Johnny
you can load up on your
Ewok.
phone. There's a website you can load up on your phone, Nightson. That's called NPC Name Creator, randomizer.
Yeah.
But I run on a potato, so I can't really take advantage of that during our games.
The one thing I liked about his was that he had a list like of dwarves, of elves, and whatnot. So you can get like culturally themed names that are appropriate. And you just, when you use one, just mark it off and write down some points about it, and then you can go flesh out that NPC later if it matters, or remember it for later.
One of the newer D&D books, I think it's Xanathar's Guide, has a name list for each sort of player or each sort of fantasy race that they have. And so it has like, here's first names and family names for all the things, so you can just go and pluck them out of there. Something I did for our Dungeon World game is I tried to sort of go with a lot of like Tibetan descriptions and things like that. And so I had a list of Tibetan and adjacent style names that would fit, and I just go through, and anytime you guys would meet a new NPC, I would just grab one and I would write who they were right next to it, so I wouldn't duplicate. And it's been great. You just keep a little list, right, of all the different names, and then when they meet insert shopkeeper, you're like, oh, their name is Tevyon or whatever, and you just write shopkeeper in whatever town.
I may have stolen it, but I think I used it when I was doing Pyro. But I have a little tiny notepad that sits right next to me when I'm running the game for you guys that I've written down a bunch of names on. And then as things come up, I'll like, okay, so this is the person that you guys ran into at the hobo camp that I didn't make up a name for because it was like the lead guy at the hobo camp, but various NPCs or what the fuck ever. And so I like would cross it off and be like, okay, hobo, or guy they met on the train, or whatever, like, and right.
The King Noble Elf of Elvenward.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bob.
Steve.
His name is
Bob.
Johnny Elven King.
He has a Shadowrun mission for you.
I think part of naming, this might be slightly off topic, but that naming thing, you can get into a little bit of metagaming there, or not in a bad way, but in a GM signaling to you that this is not relevant information by saying, oh, his name is Steve. Like, and then you just know, okay,
this is not
let's just
out.
get what I needed from this guy and then move on, because obviously there's not a lot here.
You know what, though? If you make me name somebody, they're now important.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
They're going to be important because you forced me to name them.
I like the idea that you would have a list of random, like, villain henchmen. You're like, here's my BB, here's my bad guy, right? And then he's going to need help. So just here's, like, helper 1, helper 2, helper 3. And then anytime you're annoying and you're like, what's the guard's name? You're like, fucking helper 1. Well, he's a bad guy now because he's going to come back.
Well, that's the fun thing. If you have a pre-built list of names, it doesn't look any different from you accessing that than accessing your regular notes.
Right.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, I do. His name is. I have it written here.
Right. Yeah. Which reminds me, if you're terrible at improv, go ahead and subscribe to our Patreon for $1,000.
Fucking hands.
It's not a thing.
GM
For $1,000, Handor will fly to your house and teach you How to manage your money wisely.
I'm trying to remember like one of the first things that Oreztes told me when I first started playing with them at the library like 20 years ago. They were talking about characters having stat blocks, and one of the things he told me at the table is like, so if an NPC has a stat block, they're worth experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you can know if the GM has a stat block for the character, you can kill it.
Yeah,
and it's worth experience.
Yeah, if it has a name, it has a stat block. If it has a stat block, you can kill it, and if you can kill it, it's worth XP.
It's open season if the GM has a stat block.
Well, and on that note, have generic stat blocks.
Well, and
Because
then
you never.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say there's your players are inevitably going to get into a bar fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Or punch the NPC you thought they would never punch.
Right.
Our group is renowned for fighting things or doing things in a space that you've done that you have not.
You're like,
arranged.
oh god, that guy was supposed to be like this cool guy that you were going to want to hang out with and like be friends with, and instead you walked up and decided to be an asshole, and it started an argument, and now they're in a fight. But this guy was supposed to be like the cool guy that you wanted to hang out with.
Don't you dare, Gigett. Your characters are renowned with picking fights with people. Like, I'm sorry, what are you looking at? And next thing you know, she's murdering them. Like, he looked at me weird, and the GM's like, no, he didn't. He didn't look at you at all.
I'm also known for banning people in chat for just slightly being, uncomfortable. I may have a trigger finger. I'm sorry.
He's also known for murdering children. And blowing legs off of people who are running for their lives.
Yeah. I mean, one time. I blew up one guy's leg one time.
There's only so much you can plan for them.
Yeah.
But
to a degree, you have to just...
What I was going to say about the like stat block thing is, obviously most of my stuff comes back to Savage Worlds. But this was something that I pointed out to Kurt when we first started playing Savage Worlds, and he was going to run his first Savage Worlds game, and he was like, but I can't find the stats for the specific thing that I want to be the bad guy in the thing. And I was like, dude, D6 monsters. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like parry and toughness and all that shit is a derived stat from whatever dice type you have in it. So if it's a D6 monster, you already know what its parry and its fighting are going to, or its toughness are going to be, because its fighting is a D6, its vigor is a D6. Like, you quick easy monsters, like you don't even have to pull one out of the book. Just say, oh, it needs to be a tougher monster because these guys are being jackasses. Fine, it's a D12 monster, and they're going to make you feel like you're, life is bad.
The downside of that is that works perfectly fine for a combat-based encounter.
Yeah.
It falls apart very badly as soon as you involve magic into it, because
that's true.
Then you completely ruin the ability of someone to say, oh, this is the brute, I can use his lower spirit score or whatnot. If it
everything
very
is the same difficulty.
Right. But I think the big thing is in Savage Worlds, if it's a henchman and it's just some random thing you decided to fight, if it's got a gun is the same stats no matter what era you're in. Like, hitting someone with a baseball bat is the same stats as if you're going to hit them with a club. Like, it makes it easy for that modular design. If you're just like, shit, you picked a fight with a guy in a bar. All right, cool. This is his stats.
D6 punchies.
Yeah, D6 punchies. And which means he's also going to be really easy to kill, whether you're the magic guy or the brawler guy, because all his stats are shit.
Yeah, but he's still going to have a 5 parry, and it's still harder to hit than with shooting or throwing.
Right. I don't know, maybe you picked a fight with the barmaid and she doesn't have fighting.
Nope, she's got a D8. She's used to this nonsense.
She's used to your shenanigans. Yeah. Well, cool. Do you guys have any other thoughts on modular design that maybe we didn't get to?
My last closing point is don't ever throw anything away. If it's an NPC that players didn't talk to, or a room they didn't use, or a trap that they didn't spring, save it, reuse it. Hell, if a trap they did respring or already sprung, reuse it again.
Yep. And then laugh at them when they didn't learn their lesson the first time.
Yeah.
And if you're running a game at a con and you're not sure how long it will take, then playtest it with your friends.
Yeah.
Or specifically have some scenes that okay, I can pull these out and it doesn't change the flow of my game, but if it's running long, like we can just ditch a couple things.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're doing a con game, have touch points that you absolutely must hit, and then kind of find out what content you think is the most entertaining and fun, and make sure that you kind of pushing that forward, and then have backup plans.
Even to slot in. I mean, that's a good point. If your game's running fast and you're like, I promised these people 4 hours and we're getting close to the end of what I had planned. Well, now I need to throw in a couple more encounters or somebody else for them to need to talk to.
There's a mini boss before the boss.
Right. There's some other barrier that they have to accomplish before the end to stretch out that time and get you to that 4 hour mark.
Yeah. Your players don't get to review your notes after the game, so they don't know. Nobody but you knows how many rooms are in this dungeon.
Right.
Yep.
And even if you have a map, it's very easy to say, well, the roof crumbled down here, and you can see what's in that room, but you can't quite make your way through. Like, you can set up roadblocks for them if you're like you're running behind and they want to super check everything out. Well, you can prevent that very easily. You are God, so you can wall things off and prevent them from doing things. And I know that seems kind of shitty, but you have to do that.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. I mean, there have been several games where some of the most fun scenes were the ones that I just had to make up on the fly because for whatever reason I had to slot something in, and then at the end of the game when we're talking about it and it's like, you fuckers had to make up this whole thing, and they're like, that felt written, that felt fully fleshed out. How was that made up? So sometimes having stuff that you can kind of plop in there that is even bananas to what you wrote can be really entertaining.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So cool. Kurt, can you tell people where they find us on the internet?
I totally can. People can go to pixelscandal.com to find back episodes of the show. They can find links to our social media like Twitter, Instagram, where we're at Pixel Scandal, or Facebook, where we're at Pixel Scandal Show. They can find links to our Twitch, which is twitch.tv/pixelscandal, where they can watch the show live Sundays at 1 p.m. PST, or they can subscribe if they like this show and want to support us in any way. Or they can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/pixelscandal, where they can become a patron and throw us a couple bucks a month. And definitely don't throw us $1,000 a month. That is too much, and we are not providing you that kind of content. So, but yeah, if you want to toss us $1 a month or a couple bucks a month for some, early look at some of our shows and things like that, we'd appreciate it, and it'll help us get better equipment and make the show even better. So, yeah,
it will definitely contribute towards our tabletop board game actual plays, which we are currently working on providing very soon.
For sure.
Yes.
You can get Handor to come to your house. And
for $1,000, man, I consider. Anyway.
For $1,000, Handor will stop coming to your house.
Well, awesome, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next weekend.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Back later.
damn it, Handor.